Now our next speaker is Guy Needler, and he's one of our authors. How many years has it been now?
It'll be 5 years in December, actually.
5 years.
Yeah.
We have now done 4 books by Guy. And in the beginning, you were so shy and quiet, you didn't want to say anything.
Now I can talk for England.
His first book was The History of God. And you're like an engineer, aren't you?
That's right.
So for an engineer to come out and tell people he's talking about the history of God, he was a little shy about it. You were a little worried about what they were going to say at work, too, I think.
Well, absolutely. And also, it doesn't quite mix, does it? When you have something which is specifically materialistic compared to something which is specifically ethereal, it doesn't quite mix.
And I think when it all happened, they was looking at you like, what? Where have you been hiding all this? But then after that, he wrote, I thought The History of God was enough of a mind bender, but then he went beyond that and he wrote Beyond the Source. And you're going to be talking about a little bit about this in the beginning, or not?
Yeah, there's a little bit of my history at first, and then we'll move on to the latest book, which is Avoiding Karma.
So, and then he went through 12 different, what you want to call them, levels or entities?
Oh, the source entities, yeah. They are the, if you like, God's peers. And they have their own way of evolving and creating their own multiverses and populating it with their own entities to accelerate the evolution of themselves and their creator, the origin.
So he's going through the first 6 in book 1. And he said he was going to cover the next 6 in Beyond the Source 2. And I said, if your brain holds out, because talk about mind-bending stuff, and everything he was getting was so complicated. I said, I don't know if your brain can keep up with this. But he's written those 3 books, but the one today is more down to earth now, or metaphysical earth.
Well, it's good that you're all awake, I hope. We're going to have some audience participation.
But he has just now given us a 5th book that we'll be probably putting together this next year.
Yeah, that's right. The next book's called The Origin Speaks, and it's almost like Beyond the Source Book 3, but it's
so
not.
This will be the origin, the one that created our God. So, I mean, talk about deep stuff.
But that's for next year, though.
So you were like a sleeping turtle, I guess you would say, sleeping giant when I first met you. Didn't know he had all this in him. Okay, now Guy Needler from England. We brought him over from England.
Thank you.
Okay. And he's also going to be on the cruise.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Good morning, everybody. Are you all aware and awake, or aware and hoping to be awake? Okay, fantastic. I apologise for my bright T-shirt. It's nice and sunshiny outside, so I thought I'd reflect the sun that's without and within. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is give you a short history of my awakening, something I give at every conference or every lecture I do, and then I'm going to go into the information, or should I say, the overall understanding of what the latest book, the Avoiding Karma book, is all about. Okay. So I've been involved with metaphysics from a very young age. I can remember being 4 years of age and being able to see things that weren't there in terms of the visual abilities of my mother and my father. And so I was seeing things and understanding things from a very short age. And I can remember being given a book by somebody I started working with when I was a teenager, and it taught me how to meditate. And so I meditated day in, day out. Well, should I say, in the mornings and the evenings is more correct. And during those meditations, I was starting to pick up lots of information. One of those morning meditations, I noticed I was being observed, and there was 4 white-robed individuals came to see me. And they said that what I was experiencing was right, what I was researching into was right, but it wasn't the right time for me. And so basically from that point onwards, my meditations dropped right off, my understanding of metaphysical things and spiritual things dropped right off, and I became what everybody else is, a very normal individual. I went to work, I practiced my Aikido, I progressed through the ranks at work, became middle management, went to night school and gained 2 master's degrees and became a chartered and European engineer. And I met my wonderful wife, and we bought a house, and basically we were doing everything that was materialism, doing everything that everybody else does, totally asleep, but thinking I'm awake. And so it was only later on in my life, around about the 1990s, when a student who became a friend later and is now helping me with my work, said that she was going to go to a Reiki share night and would I be interested. I initially refused about 3 times. And then later on I thought, well, I'll go. A year later I popped out the other side as a Reiki master and was continuing to be interested in the healing side. Also, at that time point, there was 2 other things happening. One is I went to see a healer who was a first-generation student of Barbara Brennan. And she said that she wanted to start teaching what Barbara had taught her. And was I interested? And I said, yes, I'll be interested. I'll go along and see this introduction weekend. And that introduction weekend blew me away. And again, I signed up for a 4-year commitment in this instance and went to what was basically 8 long weekends a year and had to do lots and lots of dissertations, personal therapy, to make sure that I wasn't passing on my stuff onto those individuals I was healing. Now, about a year or 2 into that healing course, a friend of mine had moved to Sweden, and he invited my wife and I over to Sweden for a weekend away, a 5-day holiday, and we could stay with him. But what I didn't know is that he was also doing Reiki, and his Reiki master has said, you've got to get Guy over to Sweden, there's something very important happening. And basically what happened is that he took us on a walk, and along this walk there was a nice riverside walk going towards the small village that he lived in called Trollhättan. And as I moved down the trees and went towards this pathway, I noticed my arms were tingling and my body started to tingle, and everything else started to tingle as well. And I felt a great need to sit down and meditate. So I found a place to meditate, which is on a rock just off the bank of this pathway, and sat down and meditated. My wife and my friend went to a suspension bridge, which is just about halfway up the image of this picture. And as they waited for me, they felt that there was craft that had come through a dimensional or frequential portal, and they were working on me. They were rewiring me. They were preparing me for something else I was going to do later. Now, from my perspective, I received what I can only describe as the most profound attunement I've ever received in my life. It was 25 minutes long. I was shaking afterwards, and I couldn't string 3 words together. In fact, thinking about it now, it's difficult to start getting the words to work together. So profound was the attunement. And I also noticed that when I looked over the other side of the river, I mean, bearing in mind that this was a completely airless day, I noticed that the trees were waving backwards and forwards, and the river, which was normally flat, had got lots and lots of waves there. And as I used my perceptual vision, I noticed that there was craft overlaid on the image of the trees. It was almost like those 3D pictures that you used to be able to see about 20 years ago, where if you disfocused your eyes, you could see a 3D image pop out in front of you, and that's how it looked. And as I was looking at these craft and trying to work out what they looked like, there was a very large telepathic voice sounded inside my head and said, don't strain it, don't undo what we've just done. You'll cause a problem, we'll need to work on it again. And so basically, I had to move away and walk away from that. And then over the years, things started to happen. When I was on my healing weekends, I was going to places that we weren't supposed to go to. During the Brennan Healing Science, we were taught to use the chakras to open our chakras, and which brought us up the frequencies so that we could affect healing on different auric layers associated with those specific chakras that they're aligned to, and perform other forms of healing. But some of the students I was with were saying that they were seeing some strange or disturbing images, and they were getting a bit freaked out. And my healing instructor told me off several times. In fact, there was one particular reprimanding I had that I didn't feel was justified, that set me on a different course. I thought, okay, I'm going to behave myself in class, but outside of class I'm going to work out what's going on. I'm going to try and understand where I'm going to and try and get there in a robust way. So over a period of 3 or 4 years, I developed a structure. I started to understand how to move up these frequencies, going beyond those frequencies associated with the auric layers and the chakras, and start to map out what was there. And I noticed that over a certain frequency level, level 14, that I was in contact with other entities. And some of those entities gave me some information. The first one, Byron, initially presented itself to me as a dragon entity. It tried to scare me off. It said, you shouldn't be here. You're an incarnate human being. Incarnate human beings can't do this. It's impossible. It's not, well, rare at best. But I eventually persuaded it to communicate with me. And it gave me a lot of information about the multiverse, a lot of information about what it called the source and how the multiverse worked. And as I continued to work with this entity and other entities, I started to get able to go further and further up the frequencies. And I noticed that when I was on holiday, for instance, I could get in contact with other beings as well. And I'll come back to the aliens in Crete later. But basically, I started to realize that there was a much bigger entity that was in the background. And I asked it to communicate with me. And it said, well, this is an aspect of, this is a small part of what you would call God. I am your source, I am your creator. And I entered into a dialogue with that entity, and it gave me information about what it is, what it's doing, why we exist, and the reasons for our existence, and how we're helping it with its own evolutionary progression. And then I started to go further and further up the frequencies. I noticed a much bigger being that announced itself as the origin. And it explained that it created our source entity, our God, and 11 other gods, source entities, the co-creators, as I've been told to call them, the real co-creators, the true Elohim. And that they've all been created with a single purpose in mind. And that single purpose is to experience, learn, and evolve, and pass that evolutionary content onto the origin, so that it can evolve as well. And we're all doing the same thing, but right in the grassroots level, right in the pile of the carpet, so to speak, right at the microscopic level, where actually the origin nor the source entity could go to. So as we evolve, it evolves as well. And I attained lots of information about that. And as I continued with my meditations, I started to write it down. And eventually, around about 2005, 2006, I realized I got enough material for a book. I looked at what else was out there and thought, this information it's new, it's novel, and it's interesting. Let's see if it can be published. So I eventually worked on a book and created the first book, The History of God. And subsequent books, beyond the source books 1 and 2, have been created. And the book I'm going to talk about in a moment, there's another book that popped out of the woodwork, so to speak. The latest book, The Origin Speaks, should be available next year. But that is a book that specifically focuses on a communication and a dialogue with the origin, about the origin. I'm just going to show you an image of the area in Crete where I've picked up a whole alien base. Although you can't see it with your physical eyes, and I couldn't see it with my physical eyes at all, the area above you, where those mountains were, had lots of little balconies, and there's bases all around them. And there was craft, various different types of craft, coming and going all of the time. And I focused my perceptual vision in that area. And I said to the guys over there, well, what are you doing over here? What are you here for? And looked at me and said, oh, you can see us, can you? I said, well, yes. I said, okay, what are you doing here? And I said, well, I'm And I didn't expect to see anybody else on holiday either, specifically extraterrestrial. And they said, well, basically what we're doing is we're observing the local Greeks, because in the space of one generation, they've gone from being in tune with nature, working with nature and working with the animals. They've since gone and become completely materialistic. Their children want to have hotels and cars and Mercedes-Benz cars and Gucci watches and Armani suits. They've gone from being completely non-materialistic to being completely materialistic. And so some of the dialogues I had with these entities were also part of the history of God. Okay. That leads us on to the reason why I'm here. Now I've explained how I got here, I'm going to explain why I'm here. The book Avoiding Karma really came from nowhere. Round about the beginning of 2012, I was starting to write some blogs and, on my website. And a number of them came out as being a way to avoid karma. And I thought, well, this is interesting, I'll do one a week. And as I was channeling information for my latest book, The Origin Speaks, I would get these other snippets of information about how to avoid karma. And then the frequency became more regular. A more robust cadence appeared. And these blogs came out twice a week. And after about the 35th blog, I started to realize maybe there's something in this. Maybe I should start to consider this as being something that needs to be broadcast to the wider public in a book form, rather than just as part of a transient blog that people see for a moment on their computer and then they forget about. And so over that year, I committed to this 2 blogs a week. And when I got to 104 blogs, I was told to stop. That's it. There's 2 items a week that people could read. So really you should read the book at a maximum of 2 items of how to avoid karma per week. And it will take you a year, apparently. Or if you do a good job, 2 years, 1 a week. But there was also other bits and pieces that came with it, and that became part of the last section of the book. But the interesting thing is when I was working with this channel information, I started to realize that what we're getting here is an understanding of what karma is. That it's more than we think it is, and that it's everywhere. There's good karma as well, but what we get involved with generally while we're here is literally specifically based in the physical universe. And so what I'm going to do now is give you a misconception of karma, what we generally believe karma is, and then give you a correct definition. So you can go away and think, oh, okay, there's more to this than meets the eye. And whilst I was looking at the book and the content and thinking about how I was going to present this to people like yourselves in these conferences, I discovered that there was really 5 genres of karma that we experience here. And so I'm going to go through those 5 genres of karma with you. And then we're going to go through what the ultimate goal is of karma. And then we can have some questions and answers afterwards. But it's Sunday morning, and usually Sunday morning is a time for relaxation. And I know that you're all here and eagerly open and aware and awake. So I'm going to see how aware and awake you are. So I'm going to ask you to do some audience participation with me. Fairly simple stuff. All you have to do is stick your hand up if you believe something is karma or not, in the case may be. So we're going to enjoy ourselves this morning. Okay. So I'm going to give this modern conception of what karma is. Okay. There's an overall viewpoint that karma is about cause and effect. That if I do something to somebody which is detrimental, there's a karmic link. And I have to receive that back, either from that person or somebody else, to break that karmic link. Well, in general, that's a good thought process, but it doesn't get to the detail of what's actually happening with us. Because if we don't know what karma is, how can we clear our karma? This book will help you to clear your karma in a single lifetime if you're dedicated and diligent. So a correct definition of karma is what I'm going to give you now. It's all about attraction and addiction to low-frequency behavior patterns. It's all about being here, believing we are here, working with here, wanting to be here, rather than trying to understand what we truly are. And that's because our physical universe is a low-frequency environment, and it's attractive to us. We want to come back to this low-frequency environment. Now, some of you who've done my workshops or read my books will understand what the frequencies are. They're different levels of multiversal structure. But in essence, I'll give you a quick explanation. Our source entity created a multiversal structure, a static structure, okay? Doesn't include parallelism, that's something else, that allows us to evolve up. It's a static method of us evolving. And there's 408 frequency levels associated with that. And each of them, in general, apart from the physical universe, needs a single frequency band to create the environment that allows a simultaneous universe to exist within. That is except our physical universe. Because the frequencies are so low here, we need 12 of these frequency bands to make it work. It's a little bit like having, in the old days, 12 memory sticks where to hold a gigabyte of information, where now you only need one. Well, actually, you get a memory stick that holds 128 gigabytes these days. So if you think about the progression in technology and memory space, and you can hold more data in the same space, that's what happens with these frequencies. The thing is, the physical universe is the foundation for the multiverse. And because it's the foundation, it is the lowest of the frequencies. And that's why it needs these 12 frequencies to make this universal environment. So why do we come here? It's difficult to be here. That's why we come here. If we were energetic, we would be able to use all of those abilities we have in the energetic to experience things here. But while we're here, we experience things in a most profound way, in a difficult way, in a way where we're blindfolded. We can't hear, we can't smell, we can't taste. Okay? We've lost most of our senses, in fact, if not all of them really, in real terms. And so it's like experiencing the lower frequencies in the most profound way we can. And the way we do that is by putting a new suit of clothes on that allows us to be here. This is like working under the water and having to exist in a submarine to move around the lower frequencies that are, in this instance, represented by being underwater. Now, the thing is, being here is a little bit addictive. Karma, what we understand about this cause and effect in a loose term right now, only exists in the physical universe. It is something that doesn't exist anywhere else, except maybe in a positive sense. And we attract karma when our true energetic selves, that's the higher part of us, what we sometimes call the higher self, the Godhead, or the Oversoul. It all means the same thing. Projects a part of itself into this environment, and that part of itself, the soul, or the aspect, as I've been told to call it, gets addicted to staying here. It gets confused. It believes that its existence is based upon the human being. And so we start to get linked with it. We start to want to stay here. We start to be here. And so we have a number of things happen to us. We have to try and break this link, this karmic cycle, this cause and effect when we've done something to somebody else and we have to receive it back, or if we get addicted to certain things. But this thing about cause and effect is only a very, very small part of why we're here. Okay? In a moment, I'm going to see how much you do know about karma, so don't fall asleep quite yet, because it's going to be very interesting to see what you understand about it. The thing is, we can break the karmic cycle. We can break the addiction to being here in a single lifetime now. The base frequencies of the Earth are significantly higher now than they were 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And so we can break this link. And when we break this link, we start to remove the need to incarnate. There's no point in coming here because we've understood the mechanism behind the physical universe. So what we're going to do now is see how much you know about karma, okay? So I'm going to ask you to raise your hands when I ask you to tell me one thing or another about the 5 genres of karma. Now, the first genre is thought-based karma, okay? So, how many people believe that our thoughts create karma? Put your hands up. Okay? Yeah. A surprisingly large number, that's good. It's the belief that this is us. This is what anchors us here. Okay? Every day, every hour of our existence here, we start to think that we are the human being. We trip up and we graze our knee. We focus on the pain in our knee. We bang our elbow on the door walking out the house. We focus on the pain. Yeah? When we move away from the physical, the pain goes away. So it's thoughts that anchor us to our physical universe. It's the things that keep us here. Now, what else could make us attract thought-based karma? Okay? How many of us think that what we think of others keeps us here? Yeah? Yeah? Be honest. Every one of us has a thought process of what we think of somebody else. How many of us think that what we think of somebody else is generally detrimental? Yeah? We always see the negative aspect in somebody, don't we? We always compare ourselves with them, and they're always in a lesser light, aren't they, really? You know, such and such has bought this car. It's not as good as mine. You know, they've got a house. Well, okay. If it's a bigger house and a more expensive house, it's, well, they can afford it, but they're not appreciating it. So there's always something negative in there. So that brings me on to another form of karma, another way of working with karma. That's behavior-based karma. Okay? So, how many people think that we gain karma through trying to gain things through other people? Yeah? Yeah. How many of us work with our friends and sometimes try to get benefit from our friends? Yeah? We all do it. We just don't see it. Everything that we do is accruing lower frequency existence patterns, behavior patterns. How many of you see the worst in others rather than the best in others? Yeah? Hands up. Oh, you're all getting a bit shy now. Well, maybe I do attract karma. This is important. When we see this within ourselves, it's not bad, it's good, because we can create good karma, attraction to positive frequencies, by working with what we start to realize we are doing. Okay. What have each of every one of you done today? You sat down at the breakfast table and you've chatted. What have you all done? Gossip. Fantastic. Gossip is the biggest way, or the most effective way of accruing karma on this planet. Oh yes. It creates something called group karma. And when we're involved in group karma, we can't get out of that unless every other member of that group karmic state renounces that particular form of karma. Okay? The detail behind this, by the way, is explained in the book. It's important to realize that we get sucked in. Totally and utterly, willingly sucked in. And then we stand back sometimes and think, how did that happen? How did I get sucked into that? And you bang yourself on the head and think, wow, that's interesting, isn't it? Now, we talked about personal gain through others, but what does that involve? How do we move forwards by getting somebody else to do our work for us? Coercion. Okay? When we are working with people and we want something to happen, we coerce them. How many people believe that they coerce their friends? There's only a couple of people here. Whoa, there's more than that. Every time we persuade somebody to do something, we're putting our own thought processes on them. We're trying to persuade them. It's not persuasion, it's coercion. It's coercion when they will, rather than argue against you, go with you. Oh, it's not worth the hassle. Oh, yeah? I'm not interested in fighting this again. Yeah, okay, we'll go. It could be as simple as, rather than going out for a meal, you want to go to the cinema or go and see a football match or a baseball match or something. It's making people do what you want them to do for your benefit. Okay? Behavior-based language. Yeah? What do you see around you when you think of somebody or you see somebody and you say, okay, that person's a low-frequency person. That person's a lowly evolved person. What do they do on a minute-by-minute basis that makes you realize that they are a low-frequency person or they're stuck in the physical?
Mirror.
Yeah, well, they talk with expletives, don't they? They introduce swear words, almost every other word or every 3 words. It's the use of unintelligent language. This is some, these poor people, and some of them are backfill people, by the way, or in some cases, backdrop people. Okay, they are stuck in the physical. Yeah. What else do they do that makes them stuck in the physical? How many of you believe that low-frequency individuals are aggressive? Hands up. Whoa, that's better. That's got your imagination. Absolutely. They are aggressive. They dwell in low-frequency behavior patterns. They love low-frequency behavior patterns. And, more importantly, their circle of friends, acquaintances, and work colleagues are also of the same low-frequency thought pattern. And so they feed off each other. Each of them justifies each other's condition by this low-frequency thought pattern. Okay. What's another behavior that's considered to be low-frequency?
Something about food?
Yeah, well, we can come to that in a moment. Yeah. But one of the biggest things is the evasion of responsibility. Yeah. Yeah. How many times have we, and you can put your hands up, have we been accused of something that we've done and then denied it? Yeah, we've all done it, haven't we? We don't own what we do. We don't own things that we think are wrong. We do them still, but we don't own them. Because we're afraid of people, labeling us in some way. We're afraid. And that's a human condition. That's a very low-frequency human condition. Okay. My thing's not working. That's better. So the third genre is physical sensation karma. This is going to be fun. Okay. What's next? You've passed. Okay. Sex is wonderful with people who love each other. Okay? If it's done in the right way, if we enjoy the coupling together and we use it for the procreation of the human race, for the continuation of the human vehicle for others to incarnate into. But it's when we get addicted to the sensation and we must have sex 6 times a night. Yeah. I've heard that with people. How do they do that? How do they sleep? Their poor wives or husbands. It's incredible. Next one's food. Yeah. How many of us prefer certain foods or must have certain foods? Yeah. Sugar. Yeah, absolutely. So food is an addiction as well. If we can eat our food knowing that we only need it to sustain our bodies, then we move away from this attraction to low-frequency existence. Actually, we don't need food. We are an energetic being of various different frequencies. The first 3 levels of frequency create this bit that you can see in front of you. The rest of it is energetic. The rest of it only needs energy. And actually, this only needs energy. And there are certain individuals throughout the world now, I think they're called Breathonians. They're able to work with the energies only. And they don't need to have food. So the thing about having food is, again, a purely low-frequency thought process that keeps us here. What's the next one we get addicted to?
Shopping.
Ooh. That's next. Yeah. Well, if we've got food, we've got sex, what's next? Good, alcohol, fine. Alcohol is a big problem, okay? Again, you can enjoy it, but it affects us. We get a stimulation from it. We get the buzz. Same with smoking and all those sorts of other things. We get the buzz from it, and we get addicted to this sensation, and we desire to go down the bar and partake of another drink, and we start to go on to heavier drinks, like wine and then spirits, and we get used to the level of intoxication, and so we need more to continue to get this extra buzz, and then we need more, and eventually, unless you can catch yourself, you're addicted. You're an alcoholic. Okay? So it stops us from progressing because we are stuck in this mind process. I need to have a drink today. I need to have a glass of wine with my meal. Okay? It's a hot day. I could kill a glass of beer. Yeah? It's unnecessary. It's nice to have, but we don't need to be linked in with it. Okay? If we've gone through sex, food, and alcohol, forgetting rock and roll, what's the next one? Drugs, yeah, that's right, drugs. Drugs is the next thing, okay? Drugs actually is an interesting conundrum because when we take drugs, we affect a mechanical method of projecting our consciousness outside of the physical form. Yeah? It's a mechanical way of transcendental meditation. It throws us into the lower astral realms, the 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th frequency bands. And so this feeling, this euphoria of being on a high, the state the body goes into, and then the experience, the trip, addicts us. Okay, it's nice to go there, but in essence, we're using a mechanical method, a low frequency method to get us there. We can get ourselves there regularly if we meditate. It's easy, and it costs a whole lot less. Okay? Okay. What else affects us from a physical sensation point of view? Senses, yeah.
Exercise.
Okay. What do you see on a regular basis and being adverts? Well, we'll come back to that in a moment, yeah. This is addictions. This is physical sensation. Yeah. Okay, we can go into those things as well, but what about our body condition? Wow. I was amazed last year. When I went through Denver Airport, I had the misfortune of having my flight cancelled on the way to Santa Fe. And I sat in a location in Denver Airport, and there were a number of different adverts for body conditioning classes, workshops, things you can take to accelerate your muscle growth. It was unbelievable. And they were all talking about how good they felt, how hard work it is, but they enjoyed the buzz. And I thought, that's it, isn't it? It's another form of addiction. It's another form of being kept in the physical. Another way of associating us, an energetic being, with a physical condition, which is only us in a very transient way. In terms of body condition and the buzz associated, we've got something else that's in there that's a bit more insidious. Okay? What about personal self-abuse? Yeah? That's another thing, isn't it? We find people start to damage themselves because they get a buzz on the experience of damaging themselves. That's another form of being attracted to being in the physical. Okay. I think I've got one more that you're interested in. From a physical perspective, what about adrenaline rush? Yeah? How many of you would think about adrenaline rush? Right? What about dangerous sports? Yeah. Think about how much people get a buzz from if they're driving cars fast. They're racing cars, racing bikes, jumping off mountains in these squirrel suits and getting that close from the edge of the mountain. Okay? Think of that. That's all the adrenaline rush. But more importantly, it all involves being here and doing it here. It's a physical pastime that makes us want to come back. Right. Some of you have mentioned some of the components of the next genre, which is going to be materialism. Okay? This is a big one. Okay. Give me in one word what materialism is.
Buying stuff.
Yeah. What does it create? What does it do? It's a need. Okay? What about our needs? How much stuff do we need?
Not much.
Not much. But the problem is, having a needy situation means that we've never got enough. Okay? How many of you thought that if I just get this pair of shoes, for instance, not targeting the ladies too much here, because we can use trainers for men, okay, that you'd be happy with those pair of shoes? And then you thought, well, actually, I could do with another pair of shoes. Yeah? We can only ever wear one pair of shoes at a time. And not so long ago, we couldn't afford to wear more than one pair of shoes at a time, could we? Because our parents didn't have the money. Jobs were scarce. We were going through various different global crises back in the 20s and 30s. Yeah? But when we have more, we always want more, don't we? Yeah? We're never satisfied. How many of you, hands up, who've spotted yourselves realizing that you thought you were happy with what you got, but then you wanted to have something else? Yeah. That, again, is another way of thinking about being here, about being attracted to here. Everything in the material world, in the physical universe, is transient. We're only here to experience it, to learn from it. So why aren't we learning? What about money? How many of you want more money? Yeah? Oh, come on now. Let's see. Of course you do. There's an old saying that somebody who earns £100 or $100 a week and spends $99 a week is a happy person. Somebody who earns $100 a week and spends $101 a week is an unhappy person. Yeah? So the person who's only spending $99 is happy. That person has enough. Doesn't need any more money because there's actually a little bit of saving there. When you're spending more than you have, then you have to look at ourselves and realize that we're addicted to something somewhere, that we're addicted to having extra. We need more. So what does this create? What other forms of materialism do we have around us?
Shopping, collecting stuff.
Right. Belonging with things, owning things, to have things with us around us. There's another part to this later to do with status, and some of these things do overlap. But in essence, what we own, what we broadcast to other people, is a form of status, isn't it? We'll come back to this in a moment. Okay? But more importantly, we have a need for various things. Yeah? Now, the ladies will understand this, and I think the guys will now as well. But we have a need to wear certain brands of things. How many of you here are brandless? Ooh, really? Brandless. How many of you, are wearing something that has no brand? I've got to be careful what I say here. It doesn't have Nike on, or Adidas, or Gucci, or Armani, or Levi's, or Wrangler, or Lee. Yeah? Yeah. Why do we buy things that have got brands on them? Because we want to show off to our friends and everybody else. I can afford this. Yeah? It's part of another part of karma. What about what we own? What about transportation? How many of you got more than 2 cars? Oh, more than 2 cars, great. How many more than 1 car? That's better. Yeah, I've got more than 1 car. Yeah. But it's interesting, isn't it? We only need the 1 car. If we live in a place where transportation, public transportation, is difficult or non-existent, we need to have that car. But it's when we decide that we want 2 cars, and maybe the one's a sports car, or a favourite SUV, or something that we like to be seen in that we don't want to use on a daily basis because we want to save it and make it look nice. That, again, is a form of karma. It's a link to the material world. Okay? It's all to do with needing more. We don't need to. Okay. There is something missing in this materialism-based karma that we haven't talked about yet, that doesn't appear to be materialistic, but catches us out on a regular basis. Yeah? What do we do on a regular basis, not regular, maybe 2 or 3 times a year, that we enjoy doing outside of work? Right. Vacations. Yeah. What about those vacations? Don't we like to brag about where we've been to? Cool, I've been to the Seychelles this year, it's fantastic. Yeah? I'm going to Egypt. Yeah? Nobody talks about going to, yeah, going to Greece, yeah. Nobody talks about going down the road. Yeah? Or spending a week camping on by the local river. They talk about expensive holidays. There's people that I see who are poor because of their own condition, their own educational standard, how they've been brought up by their parents, and therefore how they're able to gain compensation for the work that they do. But they put themselves in debt to go on these expensive holidays. It's amazing. It's to do with materialistic conditions. It's a form of karma that keeps us here. And this brings us on to the last genre of karma, status-based karma. Okay. So what have we talked about all through this that we haven't specifically identified? Oops. Oops. There we go. I pushed the button for too long. Yeah. Showing off your personal wealth. We all do it every day. Everything we do, from putting jewellery on, to putting clothes on, to driving the car we have, to talking about what holiday we're going on to checking out the store for a new hi-fi system or a new TV, is about showing off our personal wealth. What about people who are wealthy? How many times do you see wealthy people in the local McDonald's? Hands up. Hands up who's seen a wealthy person in a local McDonald's? Oh, you're a lucky person. Yeah? Where would you normally see them? On the golf course or in exclusive restaurants? Yeah? It's a demonstration of wealth. It's a demonstration of status. It's another form of, I'm here, look at me. Okay? We've not mentioned something else as well about status. Okay? Hands up who thinks that our job is a status condition. Yeah, absolutely. How many of you had parents who would have loved you to have been a lawyer? Or a doctor? Or an architect? Or some other form of career that is high profile, like an actor? Okay? Or a sports personality? How many of you would like to have been one of those? Yeah, we all would like to have been one of those at some point, won't we? It's all to do with being here, status. Yeah? The TV's full of it, isn't it? How many shows are on TV where you've got lawyers being famous and solving, difficult cases? They put a lot of emphasis on how important it is to be a lawyer or a doctor, and how sexy it is to be working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in a hospital. Yeah? Or talking about your cases over lunch with your dear darling wife or husband. Yeah? It's all about status, isn't it? So it's all about, it's all about wanting to be, that's it, stay there. Thank you. It's all about wanting to be famous, wanting to be better than others, wanting to be powerful. Okay? That is status-based karma. Okay? But we can move on. We can move from this. Okay? We can create a different condition. There's something else going on there. Okay? So our ultimate goal basically is to observe ourselves. Right? Use something called the observer self, where we stand back from ourselves. And we look at ourselves and we go, okay, what have my thought processes been today? What have my actions been today? What have I done that is potentially creating a karmic condition? What's keeping me here in these low frequencies? Write them down. Record them. Don't chastise yourself or beat yourself up about what you're seeing. If you're seeing this, you're progressing. You're starting this slow, gradual route up the frequencies. You're creating positive karma. Okay. I think my slides are going slow. So the whole point of being here, okay, is to be really in the physical, but not of the physical. Okay? To exist within it, use it for what it is, an opportunity to experience, learn, and evolve. And as a result, giving us the opportunity to avoid karma, to stay out of this karmic link, to move out in a single lifetime. And more importantly, it gives us an opportunity. In our single lifetime, we have the opportunity to move outside of karma, to negate the need to reincarnate, to be here for our last time. Isn't that compelling? Yeah. Okay. Any questions on this? Yes, please. Do we have microphones here, by the way? Yeah? Thanks, Cherokee. Doing okay. This lady here, just there.
Oh, thank you. If you, is this on? Oh, if you want to be here, is that considered karmic? I mean, some people might not actually want to leave.
Yes.
Some people love
Yeah,
life.
yeah.
Is that a
Yeah. We can enjoy being here. Nobody said we can't enjoy being here, by the way. It's just we don't get stuck into the need to be here. Let me explain something. There's something called the ego. Okay? The ego is a temporary personal condition, a personality, which only exists while we're in the human body. And it exists while we're in the human body because we get cut off from our higher selves. And therefore our sentience that's here, the soul, starts to develop its own personality. And it associates itself with the human form. So when we start to work with high frequency thought processes and actions, we start to raise our own frequencies. And we start to get the ability to work with these higher functions. We start to see the greater reality, work with the greater reality. And in doing so, we start to access our true personality, that of our higher self, our true energetic self, our Godhead or our oversoul, whichever way you want to call it. When we do that, we recognize that the ego isn't really us. And it dissolves, or starts to dissolve. Now, the ego is selfish. It knows its time is limited, but it wants to stay here as long as possible. And so it will do anything in its power to keep us here. It's insidious. It's clever. Yeah? It is resourceful. Every time we think, oh, I'd like to stay here for just another day longer or 3 days longer, it's because our ego wants to perpetuate its existence, not letting us progress to this state of beingness that we really are. And so anytime we think, I'm happy to be here, it's the ego tricking us, making us think low frequency thoughts to keep us on this particular frequential level, keeping us in a karmic condition, an addiction to being here. So yeah, it's anything like that is classified as karma, negative karma. Yes, please.
Guy, we just have time for a few more questions.
Okay, yeah.
Because I cut into your time in the beginning.
Okay.
Just a few more, and then we have to break.
Okay, then we've got the lady
When
over
it
here.
comes to addictions, the number one addiction in our nation is medications, prescription medication.
Mm-hmm.
But you didn't address that particular item as an addiction. How does that fit into our karmic life?
Well, actually, I did mention it. It's called drugs. Yeah? Any form of drugs, whether it is for recreation or through medication, is an addiction, isn't it? Because at the end of the day, we have free will. We don't have to have medication, do we? Yeah. We've got the ability to tell our doctor, no, thank you. So any form of drugs, whether it is recreational or medication-based, is potentially an addiction and therefore a karmic influence. But thank you for raising it. Okay, next.
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. I think one of the main reasons I want to still be here is just to enjoy the natural environment. I really don't care much about the rest. And that's not karma, right? I mean, you're not accumulating karma just from enjoying the sky and the birds and the trees, right?
If you need to see the birds in the trees and the mountains and the lakes, then the ego is playing with you.
Oh, no.
Remember, be in the physical but not of the physical. Anything that you need to have or desire to have is a karmic link. Yeah.
Well, that's disappointing.
Okay, we've got... You see how insidious and how clever the ego is. It keeps us here. Okay. Right.
I don't know if this works this way. It's like, for example, I'm working on my karma, but I do 3 actions of karma. And I also work in like my good karma or good actions just to get off. And supposedly I do 4 good things. Does that take away my 3 wrong things?
That's a good question. The most important thing is that you're recognizing that there's a need to negate negative thought processes, behavior processes, status, or materialistic conditions. However, be careful of the ego. If you think that you can get away with this bit of karma by negating it by doing good stuff, then the ego is also fooling you. Yeah? Look at how many good things you're allowed to do versus how many bad things you're allowed to do. And you'll see that the bad things are probably a little bit more. But be careful. The ego is very clever at confusing us. Okay. I think
I think that's all the time we have.
Yeah, just one more person.
One more. This is the last one.
Yeah.
Thank you. You're giving us advice on how to get out of Dodge, get over this incarnation business and move on.
Yeah.
And it raises the question of why are we here in the first place? If we typically incarnate a number of lifetimes, what is the purpose? If we move on, how do we know we have fulfilled the purpose for which this whole scene was created?
Yeah. That's a good question. And the answer is very simple. If we're evolving through the need to experience, learn, and subsequently evolve, if we negated the need to experience all of our environment that our source created for us, then we're not really experiencing everything, are we? So we come here to experience the nitty-gritty, the lowest frequencies of that environment that our source created for us to evolve within. But also, we need to learn to work with it and not be it, as it were. And that's part of the learning process. So that's why we're here, to experience everything that is given to us as an opportunity to learn and to experience and to subsequently evolve and work our way around it and come out the other side. Think of it as being able to go into a maze and come out of the maze again. Yeah? But with your eyes closed and with nobody guiding you and your ears blanked off. It's the ability to move into a difficult situation, work out what's going on, and come out again. That's part of the learning process. And if we didn't do it, we wouldn't be experiencing everything that's presented to us. Simple as that. Thank you.